Top 10 Most Mysterious Disappearances of All Time. Since the earliest days of civilization, people have mysteriously vanished without trace. Many are presumably the victims of crime, accidents, and simple bad luck witnessed by no one. In modern times, with the advanced investigative abilities of law enforcement, these strange events continue to occur, and with the advance of flight and mass transportation in the last century, another layer of inexplicable disappearance has been added to this unexplained phenomenon. Tables about of mysterious disappearance, many of them have been retold numerous times with no new evidence being offered. Of many of more bizarre tales do not stand up to serious analysis and are more likely to be fictional tales and urban legends that have gained an air of believability over decades of retelling. But there are few disappearances of individuals, groups, and machines that have been thoroughly investigated over time and yet still remain truly inexplicable. The following disappearances, all taking place over the last century or so, have been extensively investigated, yet they still remain the most enigmatic disappearance of all. Number 10. The Actress That Vanished. Dream Spangler. Dream Spangler was a dancer, model, and occasional actress in Hollywood in the 1940s. But one day in 1949, she disappeared without trace. Dream left her home in Los Angeles one evening, leaving her daughter with her sister-in-law, and was due to meet her ex-husband and then go on the film shoot. Dream never made it to the movie set. Instead, she disappeared after she was last seen outside at a store near her home, where she appeared to be waiting for someone, where ex-husband has questioned it, and he had not seen her either. Investigating detectives were baffled until Dream's purse was found in the park, with torn strap as if it had been ripped away from her. There was a note in the purse addressed to Kurt that read, "Can't wait any longer, going to see Dr. Scott." It suggested that Dream had been planning on abortion, which was illegal at the time, and she had recently been seeing a boyfriend named Kurt, but he had never been seen by her friends. A long investigation, which even saw a $1,000 reward offer for information, never revealed any further clues to Dream's disappearance, and she is still listed as missing, and the case remains open to this day. Number 9. The Mission Prime Minister Harold Hart. The name Harold Hart is barely known today, which is somewhat surprising considering that he was the 17th Prime Minister of Australia, serving in a role from 1966 and 1967. His term in his office of only 1 year is because 1967 is when Harold disappeared without trace from Xavier Beach in Victoria, Australia, and was never seen again. It is believed that by some that Holt drowned at sea, which would be surprising considering his known proficiency as an exceptionally strong swimmer. He could possibly have been attacked by a shark, but many others believe the Prime Minister was murdered, possibly for his strong anti-war stance and opposition to the war in Vietnam. His time in the office was also the subject of much controversy amid scandalous corporation allegations, and without doubt there were many Australian police who were quietly glad when Holt vanished without a trace. Despite several researchers studying the facts, the witness statements from the many members of the Hugh party that sources the area after his disappearance, no clear proof have ever been forthcoming as to what actually happened to Harold Hart. Number 8. The Disappearance of Rebecca Corrigan. Rebecca Corrigan was a crew member on the cruise ship Disney Wonder as it turned the coast of Mexico in the Pacific Ocean in March 2011. Although known for her cheerful demeanor and positive outlook on life, Rebecca disappeared from the ship early one morning after the mysterious telephone conversation that left her clearly distraught. Investigations by the police turned up no conclusive answers as to what happened to her, other than CCTV footage of Rebecca during recall and the suggestion that had slipped overboard. Rebecca's parents later heard from her bank that there would have been activity on her credit cards week after her disappearance, and her Facebook password had also been changed. Determined to find the truth, a journalist made inquiries from the ship's crew and claimed that many of them alleged Disney's were complicit in the cover-up of the true events of the case, with allegations that the entire ship was covered by CCTV cameras, and Disney had a tape that showed exactly what happened. Despite further questions from the Comian family, the case remains confused, and the official investigation appears to be perfunctory at best. Questions have been asked, and Disney criticized it in the British Parliament over the case, but to date the full story is still shrouded in a mystery. Number 7. Emperor Beers, the Mission Writer. Emperor Beers was a celebrated and sometimes controversial writer known for his dynamism and talent at storytelling. He had witnessed incredible honors in the American Civil War, where he had served with distinction and great honor of his acts of incredible bravery, but the experience left him sardonic, somewhat misanthropic, and earned him the nickname Bitter Beers. Also famous for his influential journalistic work, and brought travel to Mexico in 1930 at the age of 70 to experience the Mexican Revolution for himself, where he disappeared without trace within a year. All attempts to unravel his last action have been left confused by the wealth of contradictory reports, and despite several well-researched investigations, his disappearance remains one of the most famous in American history. Number 6. What happened to Judge Crowder? John Sheffield Crowder was a New York Supreme Court justice who disappeared without trace from the center of New York City without trace one night in August 1930. Judge Crowder was a well-known and controversial figure, occasionally embroiled in political scandal, who had left his wife and home in Manhattan upon getting a phone call. He told his wife that he needed to go back to New York City to work things out, but he offered no further details. In New York the next day, he spent time destroying some correspondence before he cashed two checks amounting to nearly $5,000, equivalent to over $70,000 today. He had some food with a lawyer friend that evening, apparently in good spirits, left the restaurant and simply vanished into thin air. 10 days later, his wife reported him missing, and a high-profile search for truth began. But after months, several conclusive leads, and a massive investigation, no new evidence regarding his disappearance ever emerged. The case became one of the most high-profile missing person cases of the 20th century, but Judge Carter was never seen or heard from again. The case was eventually closed in 1979. Number 5. The Mission Shot Children. Christmas Eve 1945, the family home of the Charter and Trendy Sauter erupted into flames. Forced to escape the inferno, the couple had no choice but to leave 5 of their 10 children to perish in the blaze as the stairway was blocked. It was a terrible tragedy, but for Charter and Trendy Sauter, it was a beginning of a nightmare lasting until the end of their life. When the volunteer staff local fire department eventually dammed down the smoldering ashes the following morning, no remains of the 5 younger children could be found, and their parents become convinced that they have been kidnapped by persons unknown. Giotto was a vocal opponent of Benito Mussolini and his strongly worded views had earned him several enemies in the Italian community of Payette, West Virginia. On the night of the fire, several strange events had occurred, such as an unusual telephone call and strange banging noises on the roof. George also believed that the fire, attributed to electrical faults despite his recent rewriting of the property, was a clear case of arson. Until their respective deaths in 1969 and 1989, George and Tranny turned to the site of the former home into the memorable garden and put up the billboard offering a reward of information about the missing children, but all to no avail. The last surviving member of the household, Sylvia Shorter Paxton, continued to search for the truth about her missing sibling to this day. Number 4. The King Cross Incident. Pilot Lieutenant Alexis Moncla, Jr., and his radar operator, Lieutenant Robert Dale Wilson, was sent to intercept an unknown radar return over Lake Superior on November 23, 1953, Air Defense Command watches as Moncla F-89C Scorpion pressed closest on the object, and then appeared to merge with it, suspecting that the Scorpion had either flown above or below the object. They expected to see the Scorpion presence on the radar reappear on the other side, and it never did. Fearing the possible completion in a large-scale search and rescue operation was launched, but no trace of Moncla's plane was ever discovered. The U.S. Air Force investigated claimed that the unknown plane was a Canadian C-47 Skytrain that was traveling off course, but the ECAF denied that possibility strenuously. Despite many searches, no trace of the explosion has ever been found. The events of the day remain completely unexplained. Number 3. The plane that vanished. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Flight 370 disappeared en route from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in Beijing, China on March 8, 2014. In unusual circumstances, with 239 passengers that crew on board, the Boeing 777 is known to have reared considerably, of course, before the strain motor that enabled the plane to be crashed was mysteriously turned off. Despite a search lasting almost 3 years that has extensively looked for remains of the plane over a 250,000 square miles, only a few small pieces of wreckage have been found, and the events that lead up to the plane's disappearance remain a perplexing mystery. In January 2017, authorities in Malaysia announced that the search that has so far cost over $50 million that would be ended, to the protest of the relatives of those on board still desperately research for answer. Number 2. The missing scientist, Actus Matrona. True intellectual giants are rare and remarkable, but Actus Matrona, born in 1906, was without a doubt of an exceptionally outstanding scientist. The young Italian physicist studied under the Enrico Fermi, who compared his brilliant genius to Galileo and Newton. He worked with Heisenberg and Niels Bohr in Germany and was considered by all who he met as an incredible pioneer of theoretical physics. His genius was so far ahead of his time that even now his theories are still yet to be confirmed. Yet in 1938, aged just 32 years old, Matrona disappeared on a boat trip from Palermo to Naples. He sent an enigmatic note to the college explaining that he intended to disappear and was subsequently never seen again. Several explanations for his actions have been offered ever since, ranging from suicide to murder to stop his collaboration in the construction of a nuclear weapon, but no one knows for sure what happened to the incredible academic. In 2011, Evidence was uncovered that suggested Ettore may have fled to Venezuela to live a life of quiet study and devotion to his work, but the true story of his eventual end will probably never be conclusively known. Number 1. Where did Flight 19 go? Probably the best known case of our list is the disappearance of Flight 19. A term used to describe the group of 5 planets and a total 14 servicemen that disappeared without trace on December 5 of 1945. The training flight of 5 Avenger torpedo bombers left Fort Lauderdale, Florida and headed to Bahamas region for the practice bombing run. The group headed by Lieutenant Charlotte Taylor, an experienced World War II veteran pilot who has seen extensive combat in the Pacific Fleet during the war and with over 2,500 flying hours under his belt, soon encountered difficulties. Compasses on the bombers stopped working, and the crew became lost. Taylor believed he was flying over the Florida Keys and ordered the men under his command to fly east to reach Florida. But the group never appeared back at the base, and soon radio contact was lost in Flight 19. Eventually, PB and 5 Mariner carrying 13 crew left Port Lauderdale to search for mission plans, but it soon also lost radio contact and was believed to have inexplicably exploded in midair. Despite extensive investigation by both in the Navy and the independent researcher ever since, the exact reason for the disasters remained unclear. An incident that cost the life of 27 men soon led to the area, now known as the Bermuda Triangle, gaining its fiery reputation.